If you're wondering how to identify your sexual needs, feel like you're stuck in an unfulfilling relationship, or are simply curious about autism, neurodivergence, or childhood trauma, then today's episode might be a helpful resource. My guest today is Nadja Lasbeck. She's an intimacy coach, relationship therapist, lecturer, and a mother. Nadja and I delve into a wide array of topics, including how to identify and communicate your sexual needs, why we stay in unfulfilling relationships, why Nadja finds it hard to experience joy, why we look at the past through rose-tinted glasses, why we carry out addictive behaviours that make us feel bad, why learning about autism might make you appear more autistic, why Nadja believes her autism makes less people like her, why my attraction to a resting bitch face might actually be an attraction to neurodivergence, what Nadja's secret kink is, examples of common kinks which you shouldn't be ashamed of, differing perspectives on using masturbation for self-soothing, the strange state that men enter after ejaculation, variety in men's sperm and how that affects survival strategy, why music is a bit like porn but with more magic, my alternative perspective on the regrets of the dying, if there really is a difference between imagination and reality, figuring out who we are without our trauma, and whether or not buying sexy lingerie for your partner at Christmas is a selfish act. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Nadja Lasbeck. Hey everyone, just a quickie before we get into the conversation. The podcast is always going to be free, so I'm never going to ask you to pay for anything. But if you could do me the kindness of subscribing and maybe leaving a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you and enjoy the episode. What was your childhood like?
Oh, Jesus.
I did ask.
Can I answer that previous question again? So like a public answer?
Whatever you want. A private one that I can publish to the world.
Yeah, I guess it's no secret that the very most people who seek out this profession have reasons for doing so, and the same is the case for me. I did have a turbulent childhood, surely. My parents were I wanted to say mismatched, but I'm guessing they were very well matched. My mother's kind of close to a narcissistic disorder. My father died by suicide when I was 15. So I can't say that for sure, but in retrospective, I'd say he's probably had a borderline disorder. And they were just like a wild, violent combination, these two. And then there was me in the middle. And it's very funny because I'm right now in a phase of my life where I noticed I'm letting go of a lot of like grudges, really, kind of.
Like resentment.
Yeah. I did hold some anger. And it's funny that you're bringing this up because I've just like the last days I've been talking so much about how things are suddenly changing inside of me and how I don't feel very angry anymore, and I was always worried that I'll get bitter over these experiences that I have made, but I don't feel bitter really.
Why?
So anyway.
Why do you think that's changed?
So one thing, I guess, it's getting very personal right in the beginning. Jesus. One thing is, so my father was 36 when he died, and I am 36. And just now, I am older than my father has ever been. And somehow that has been kind of, it feels like it's the end of like a circle. I'm kind of starting a new chapter. That's just very interesting. I'm at this point still not sure what that actually means, but I can feel an impact on that. Mm-hmm. It's like kind of as if now my life as an actually independent adult kind of starts. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But this is 100%. Kind of like, so I'm just entering this chapter, which which my father has like no influence on, kind of. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's powerful.
Mm.
You mentioned, you said turbulent.
Mm.
Was there any joy?
Joy.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing that I was discussing, that it's very difficult for me to experience joy, as in heartfelt joy. Like I think I have a good laugh whenever I can. I'm very drawn to humor. That's one of my coping skills. But heartfelt joy, I was using this reference of like when you're out in nature and it's very beautiful, and let's say you're hiking with someone, and then I have my hiking buddy who's like, wow, this is beautiful, and I will cognitively absolutely agree and say like, yeah, objectively this is extremely beautiful, but it's not here, it's not in my senses, it's not
Yeah,
there's no
you're not
joy
feeling
pouring
it.
out of me, it's not there. And so it's difficult for me because it's difficult to recall a lot of things from my childhood and my youth. It's also difficult for me to recall joy. I have like few incidents where I remember being with friends and like laughing so hard that I couldn't breathe. This like hysterical childhood humor where
Yeah.
it's kind of it's I feel like it's magical. There's this magical age where you start to understand jokes, actually understand them, but you're still kind of in this like unhinged childish state of like someone can make that same fart joke over and over again and you just lose your mind over it.
Mm. Yeah, I can think of like, yeah, a few things. They end up being these little silly little things that probably don't make any sense to anyone apart from like you and like a few other friends, but they
Yeah.
just stitch you up every time.
Yeah, exactly. And then you're just like cry laughing. I remember just being so out of breath, I felt like I'll die just because I can't breathe. I'm just like,
But that was joyful, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
When's the last time you felt like that?
Oh, luckily last weekend.
What were we doing?
I was driving with my girlfriends. We had a weekend outside of the city, which was extremely lovely. It had one of those nature incidents of like, objectively, it's very beautiful here. And don't get me wrong, I love being out in nature. I think it's the only place where I do feel some sort of like calmness, actually.
Mm.
Um, but on the drive there, we had a conversation. Yeah, it was unhinged. It was about the party that my girlfriends went the night before, and it was a Halloween party. And there was this dude who was dressed as like a zombie pirate, and my friend was kind of drunk and just like kind of wanted to shake hands and was like, hey, and give his hand over, but he has like he's missing some fingers. Like
Right.
actually not having them, and she just screamed. Ah! Because she thought it was a prop.
Oh wow. So
And
yeah,
he was just like dead face looking at her like, it's okay. And then the whole way we discussed where one of my friends was kind of like, man, that was not okay. That was not okay. And I was like, I don't know. I think he could have given her the other hand, honestly. Like it's
Yeah,
something that you would expect on a Halloween party being dressed as a zombie.
with no fingers.
And so we just had this whole unhinged discussion for like 45 minutes where I cry laughed actually at some point.
How many fingers was he missing? Did he
I
have
don't know.
like one thumb? Was he just constantly giving the thumbs?
I think it was not just because it sounded like it was like some birth complication. So
Oh,
I
fuck.
think he did not develop like his full hand actually.
See, I was lining up a joke about like the medieval like punishment there, and now he was born with it. I feel like a cunt.
Yeah, the
Well,
whole discussion kind of was touching on that, like, yeah, being just a little over it, you know. It was good.
Yeah, it's a funny story. It's funny laughing at other people's misfortunes, isn't it?
I mean, the fun part was that she was so embarrassed. She was just like, my friend was like, "Did you tell her? Did you tell Nadja? Did you tell Nadja what happened?" And she was just like, "No, no."
What is it like? What is it about that sort of situation that is so funny? Because there's like coming up for me now, I'm kind of like, oh, I feel a bit guilty, but I'm like, but I want to laugh. It's funny. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is there some nastiness there? Or is it that it's just a funny situation? Because,
Well, the question is, what makes it funny? You know?
I suppose it's because it's done in public.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, when you're at school and the teacher would look at you and just laugh. And it wasn't because anything was funny. Well, this was me. I would just, what are you laughing at? And I just like, I don't know. And it's almost like the tension. It's the tension of the of the social situation. Just kind of like it's this energy, and often all you need is like a fucking something just to spark it. And if there's a guy with no fingers at a Halloween party.
Poor guy. I think so. What I've heard once, which I guess I agree mostly with, is like some comedian saying that that the jokes that comedians make are only funny because they kind of call people out, you know. And even if you're making a joke about yourself, what's funny to other people is that they relate, right? So some comedians' whole bit is just shit talking themselves, but other people, they relate to that, and then they get indirectly called out for their bullshit. Like C.K. Lewis does that all the time, right? Where he just kind of talks about what a nasty ass fucker he is, and then people are like, "Oh my god, that's me."
Yeah.
So I think it's that. It's like yeah, there is some nastiness in it. I think it's important. It's an important aspect of it is that, you know, that's kind of messed up, but also it's true, you know. It's like there's this authenticity in it. It wouldn't be funny if it wouldn't touch
and
that
like the
ugly authenticity,
the
authentic
comedy
part.
thing is just like there's something just if it doesn't touch on like a emotional level on like the fact that life is very painful.
Yeah,
that kind of feels like the underlying theme, and then we laugh like, yeah. I feel a bit sorry for the one-thumbed guy or whatever now, because it's been laughing at him.
we don't know that.
But yeah, but I don't know the guy. I'm just laughing at the situation. It's nothing personal.
I mean, I was laughing about my friend, to be fair. I was laughing at her. I wasn't laughing at his hand.
No.
I was, though, contemplating why he would do that. And then this whole discussion took a turn of my friend saying, well, part of being emancipated is like, well, this is my fucked up hand. I'm not going to hide it. we had this whole discussion where it was like, but why do you put yourself in a situation like that? Because it's not like you could not foresee that.
Yeah, you're like, no matter all the stoic training you do, I wouldn't like envisage, like, I wouldn't be prepared for that.
Yeah,
But
no. And obviously that wasn't happening for the first time because, yeah, he was just like dead serious that it was okay.
poor guy. Fucking 31st of October.
Maybe it was part of his thing. Maybe he had the best laugh out of it later on. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe he like does that every Halloween and then goes home to his wife and
Yeah.
his mansion and just like, oh, you should have seen them. She was horrified.
I got them. 3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea of it. Yeah, the joy thing. I spoke to Chris about this actually. Why do you think it's so hard to experience joy?
um, because I dissociate it and still do sometimes, and I don't get to choose what I want to dissociate.
Same old.
So, part of my coping as a child with a bunch of traumatic events was dissociating all of that memory. I have very few memories and they're not nice. um, and so the thing is that once you get that rolling, like dissociating memory, um, it's working, you know. It's not, there is basically no one in charge doing the choosing of what you are going to dissociate. It's kind of like this is a mechanism that has been put in place now, and every time the emotions are strong, that's what's going to happen, right? So if I got extremely overwhelmed, I would dissociate. If I would have extremely intense joy, I would dissociate because my system's just kind of it's
Okay.
built in, you know.
So is it because like those neurochemicals, because there's such a mix of them, almost like the body can't figure out which is which, so it just dissociates from everything?
Yeah. So you know when you burn yourself, basically your body does not know whether it's cold or hot.
Yeah.
Once it's very interesting if you've never experienced that. Once you know that, you will notice it, like putting your hand in like
Yeah, yeah.
the real hot bathtub. The sensation is the same as putting it in extremely cold water. So it's
That's
kind of, yeah.
that's a fucking really good insight.
Mm.
Yeah, a good way of thinking of it.
And so I've worked through that, but it's a very powerful mechanism, and I'm not sure if that ever is like going to go away. I'm hoping that it's going to go a little bit away, a little bit further, maybe. We'll see. It's not that I don't experience joy at all, but it's just very rare and very difficult to have an immediate feeling of like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And
I
I also have this processing thing, which yeah comes with autism, where I'll usually know 2 or 3 days later, like, oh, this was great, just like, oh, this was shit. It just takes a while.
so you sort of like you can look back and go, "Oh yeah, that was actually quite a joyful experience. I
Yeah.
probably didn't really feel it at the time, but I can reflect and have gratitude."
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I think sometimes we have this like the way of looking at the past as well. Do you not think? Where even like, let's say I don't know, you went on a holiday that wasn't very good, or you're in a relationship that wasn't very good, and then for some reason your mind wants to hold on to, well, that was good, or whatever, and it feels like sometimes it works against you. Certainly when you've left a relationship,
Yeah.
or when you decide to book to go to the same shitty hotel in Spain, and you're like, remember when we were here last time? Wasn't it great?
Specific, Jason.
Actually, do you know? I don't know if it is a specific example for me.
No.
There's something in there that kind of is connecting, but maybe just holidays in general with an ex-partner. That's probably what it is, actually. Like, oh, remember when we went on holiday? That was great, wasn't it? Apart from I spent the whole time in my head thinking about how unhappy I was.
Yeah, holidays are a really good example. You get like really stressful time and then you come back and you're like, well, that was nice.
Yeah. Weird, isn't it? It's almost like it's almost like exercising out like this kind of stressful situation and then bringing it back. There's something about that resolve. Like, imagine like the house is really untidy, then you tidy it up. Like, there's something like addictive about that. And like, have you ever smoked or vaped?
I was a very intense smoker for a long time.
Yeah, or like, I don't know, fucking fill in the blank thing. But it's like, how many times would you have a cigarette and actually you go, this is horrible. I feel terrible. I feel jittery or whatever. Like, so you get maybe the first
not too
few.
often, honestly, not too often. I enjoyed smoking.
You're European, aren't you?
Yeah. But there was
like,
moment when you're like,
there's a tolerance, though, isn't there?
terribly hungover. Having a fucking cigarette is the worst. Is the worst, and you know it in the moment. It's terrible.
But you keep going back to
Gross.
it.
It's like you're really hungover. You feel like you're going to puke every moment. You have a headache. Like it's the most counterintuitive thing to have a cigarette, but then you're addicted. So
yeah,
and then you have a cigarette, and yeah, there's something in the system that's just kind of like. Meh.
But there's like a bit where like you let's say your like your nicotine levels, like you push it, maybe a bit too much, and maybe when you're hungover, your tolerance is way lower, anyways, and then you kind of just start coming back to like homeostasis, and that's the nice feeling. There's like a bit in the middle, and then you get back to normal homeostasis, and you go, I have a fag cigarette.
Yeah. Oh man, drugs are weird.
Yeah. Makes me think of the sauna as well. Like, I always think a sauna. Sauna is a great example of impermanence because I like do the hot cold thing. You ever do this?
Just on the weekend, yeah.
Yeah, and
it's Germany. It's engraved in our culture.
Awesome. Yeah, and yeah, like so you go into the like I go into the cold and then I come back into the hot, and then there's this like I said this bit in the middle, this like fucking sandwich filling of like where like all of a sudden like the blood's starting to get back into your brain, and then you're like, oh, this is amazing, and then I'll start getting all these ideas. I'm fucking love the sauna. I'm like, I just want to stay in this state, and then you start getting too hot. Fucking hell, I lost it. Impermanence.
And then all the thoughts get like wiped away by just the hot blood pumping in your brain.
Yeah. I get.
But I think it's a good reference. Like I am kind of relieved that you said that, because I was thinking about how for me, like the first drink would do that. I'm like, this is awesome. or maybe it's like
Mm.
mid second drink,
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it's
yeah.
exactly that state of like, man, this is where I want to be.
100%. Yeah.
Then you drink more and it's over, or you stop drinking and then it's over. So it's kind of impossible to hold on to that.
Mm.
And I'm guessing that's part of my addiction problem, just the way that I think and feel about this. It's like, yes.
Yeah, I wonder, like, we talk about autism and neurodivergence, like your experience in childhood and, uh, blocking off emotions as a adaptive response. Like, what, like, is there a chicken egg scenario with like that autistic development? Do you think?
Yeah.
As in, no, as in just born like that, or is there some nurture?
Who would know?
Yeah.
Um, it's also for clients and like a bunch of people that I've worked with. It's yeah, you never know. Like um, most of these people have very difficult experiences, um, and the autism symptoms definitely fit into the box of like coping mechanisms. But then also some things I feel like are kind of inherent to my persona, actually. Like, um, I love collecting information about animals of all kinds, and I believe it's been like that. You know, it's
Mm.
like I'm special interest person. I when my client I have a client who was the other day. He's always taking walks when we have our sessions, and then he would like mid sentence he would stop and turn around his camera to show me his favorite tree. And I did so appreciate that. It was a great tree. It was such a good
Mm.
tree. And I really got into it like, oh, is that moss? You know? And so I do feel like that's part of me. It's something that both of my parents also kind of haven't had, something that my grandma already cultivated, like just a big interest for nature and I know also like being a little overwhelmed with how you say, with like indirectness in social situation, like social clues and all of that. Like I know that generations before me struggled with that.
Hmm.
So well, either it's something that's passed down or it's something that's like genetically in there. And then for animals, we know that um, they will physically, biologically adapt over generations to their surroundings. So it's kind of, you know, who knows? Who knows, really?
Yeah. And like when we're talking about like the neurodivergence, autism, whatever,
Mhm.
all that, like the more I feel like the more I talk about it, the more I become aware of it, the more people tell me that they think I'm autistic.
Mhm.
It's both freeing because you're like, oh, I just used to think that I was weird.
Yeah.
So that's kind of nice. But then I'm like, I feel like the more you learn about it, the more you become it. You know what I mean? Like,
And it doesn't really make you less weird. That's the thing. You have a label for it. But to me, it's like, well, it's great to have a vocabulary for it and to talk about it, but that doesn't really give me practical tools, you know?
yes, it kind of has like a bit more control of you.
Hmm. How do you
Yeah.
notice that? Like, is it So you start identifying more with it. Is that it?
How can I explain it? Like, almost like there's levels to it where you kind of go, you hear it a few times, and someone says, "Oh, you probably got autism," and then I had like recently someone who's has autism, like fucking hell, like you're worse than me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that is that
We're
is
all just on
that?
the spectrum. Like, you have to remember that.
Yeah. And I was like, and I was like, like you do realize you got autism? I was like, really? And like, yeah. And I was like, she don't think you did. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe. But I was kind of just thinking I was just going down this like new age thing of like labeling everything and picking up every fucking thing under the sun.
Mm.
Yeah. And it's like, and I suppose there's like positives to that. But then also when I'm in a moment of feeling like unconfident, I'm never going to meet anyone, I'm unlovable or whatever, then it's like, oh, you're also autistic. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, I'm like, fucking hell, yeah. Like all those years where like I was at school, I had alcohol and I had guitars,
Mm.
and I could hide behind that.
Mm.
And then you kind of like strip that stuff away, and it's just like just a bit of a geeky guy,
Yeah.
bit awkward.
Yeah.
So I don't know where I'm going with this. I don't know what the take home is. I don't know what I'm trying to tell you. I'm just we'll stay on topic, I promise, because I've got
No,
loads of
no
stuff I want to
worries.
talk to you about.
I was just thinking that I think it was Chris who said to me that if such a big number as it is today is neurodivergent, then it's not really a divergency anymore.
Yeah,
I did like that. That was
he's a
like,
fucking insightful character, isn't he?
yes. And he's a character.
Yeah, sorry, it's insightful soul. We're talking about Chris Hurst, by the way. If anyone doesn't know who we're talking about, go back and listen to that podcast episode. Yeah, 100%. And apparently, my friend was telling me, because I live in this area of the UK in the northwest, and it's working class town. So what they do is they put all the fucking radiation stuff and they put all the nuclear weapons up here with the northerners. And apparently, there's more. Like, this is a little bit kind of. It's a very neurodiverse thing to say, anyways. But like, apparently, there's more instances of neurodivergence in this area, and one of the things is like, maybe like a lot of like working class trauma, and then I don't know, fucking chemicals. I have no evidence to back that up. It's fully speculative or whatever.
Mm.
But yeah, you kind of look around and you go, well, yeah, I suppose he is, and she probably is, and then
Yeah.
where are all these neurotypicals?
Exactly. Who is that? Who is that? Well, no, I know a couple of people, but I really don't know many, to be fair.
Mm.
But then also, um, I don't. Well, as I said, I don't. I don't pick up on subtleties in communication. I don't understand indirect, indirectly addressing issues. I just don't get it. I really don't. Which means that having some sort of like friendly relationship to me is probably extremely unattractive to a lot of people, because what I notice is that people don't feel understood by me lots of times, which is funny because it's my job to understand people and make them feel understood. But in like social situations, there is like a code of things that you shouldn't say, right? Things that you should say, and things that imply other things. And if you don't understand any of those, or just hardly, people think you're rude. And you're kind of like, no, no, thanks. And I get that. Like, technically, I understand the concept, but it just still doesn't make sense to me. Where I'm like, well, you could just say directly how you feel, and you could directly address what you want and not want, and that would be a lot easier
Yeah.
logically. But then people don't do that, and I'm not sure why, but they don't, and I I respect that. But then I think, like, so what I'm trying to get at is, like, neurotypicals, they will just not feel attracted to me as a person, and I get that.
Did you know that to be true?
I know people's reactions, and I know the people that. So I've made the experience quite a few times in my life that people would, after meeting me, approach me with the very direct question of if I wanted to be their friend, which is kind of like what like 10-year-olds do, right? You would not expect that usually from adults, which to me is just kind of like, I've met another autist.
Yeah. I've had this experience.
I just want to be your friend. I'm like, cool. Or I can say, actually, no.
Yeah.
And I know other people don't do that, and I know that I've understood how it works. Like, I can adapt to things. I move in my everyday life, right? And I do that in a kind of successful way, which means that I have learned to understand how this works for people. So if someone does not seek out contact to me and does not respond to me seeking out contact, that's a clear message, right? In neurotypical world. In neurodivergent world, I would know, like, oh, okay, they're just like doing something, they're busy. They'll get back to me with a very specific question out of nowhere. But like, yeah, so I know that, like, people don't, sometimes, very rarely, people will tell me later on, like, how they experience difficulties with me in the very beginning of, like, I don't know, me being direct, or me I'm not how can I say, I take time to actually, like, get to people. Like, I'll be very observant with people, and
You're talking in like a physical setting.
yes, yeah, exactly. So I'll
So
meet
if you're
someone, and
a gathering, you'll kind of keep your distance.
exactly, and I'll meet someone, and I will actually think, oh, that seems to be a nice person, but there will be no no signs for it, because I am in, like, yeah, let's say it's like a dinner party or something. I won't be seeking out contact to them and be like, hey, that's very interesting. It's just not in my toolbox, I'll just sit there and kind of observe people. And when people try and make small talk to me, I will be I'll be an extremely ungrateful partner for that. I'm like, why are we talking about that? And so sometimes people kind of get over that phase with me, and then they become my friends, and it's very nice. And then sometimes I get, like, in reflection, they will tell me, like, it was very difficult to tell if you were just kind of an arrogant cunt. I'm like, yeah. I see.
So if you were,
yeah, me,
all right. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about me for a second, cause
yeah.
I spoke about this on attachment theory podcast on, I have just made up a name. Jessica De Silva's talk about attachments. I did an interview and I talked a lot about how I was attracted to emotionally unavailable women, resting
Mm-hmm.
bitch face, as I would
Mm-hmm.
say. I'm like hot. And as you were speaking then, I was like, if I saw it, like, I'm not flirting, but I'm saying if I saw you and I'd be like, oh, she looks a bit like I would probably be attracted to that standoff, like
Yeah.
what you were saying.
Yeah.
Something like in me is going, I want to talk to her.
Yeah.
But then I was thinking, I just had like an insight, and I'm like, maybe it's not the resting bitch face. I mean, maybe it's both, but like maybe it's like a fucking autism banner.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm
It's
like, God,
related to that
that's
other
my
person.
people.
Yeah. I don't like, so for me, it's extremely, I notice that it's extremely unattractive for me if someone is like the, how do you say, the joy of the party. Someone's like in the
Mm.
middle of everything. I'm like, nah. You know, because
See
I,
that's
I
kind
don't,
of
yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
Literally, like to me, that sounds like how my previous girlfriends would have talked about me
Mm,
because I was like this kind of extroverted, introvert, whatever,
yeah.
probably drinking. So I was always the loudest.
Yeah.
I'm like, quiet girl in the corner.
Mm.
Like, that's giving me the death stare. I'm interested in her. Do you know what I
She's
mean?
annoyed.
And then she'd be like, look at that cunt.
Yeah.
I, honestly, it's weird. And then, like, because I would know that they thought that about me. And then
Mm,
there'd be like this thing in my head where I need to show her that I'm not a dickhead.
mhm.
Yeah, weird.
And to be fair, I've been that girl on the table on the party. It
Okay.
was like specifically what drinking was about,
Mm.
was being that, because I don't necessarily always enjoy being like caught up in myself, and I do enjoy a good laugh, and I do enjoy like a hysterical time.
Hmm.
Is There's something in it, definitely. But
Yeah,
I had
part
to
of
think to make myself do that. And I think I've always seen that in other people too, where it's kind of like if you need to entertain everybody, then because there's a part inside of you that needs to entertain.
Mm. Yeah.
Which probably isn't really very healthy. Now that I think about it, it's like the way that I think and feel about myself is kind of like I am this person that I would not be attracted to.
We went deep, didn't we?
I remember you wanted to talk about intimacy, actually. Yes.
Yeah. So I have all right, so that's the intro, 51 minutes. Um
Yeah.
so I've got a load of tactical stuff,
Mhm.
and then I've actually got yeah, let's do the tactical stuff, and then I've got like a little like fun thing in the middle. So it
Mhm.
might start going deep again, but I think it'll be like fun deep. How can we identify and communicate our sexual needs?
Um, One thing that I really like is actually that comes from Emily Nagoski. She has she wrote a great book called Come As You Are, and she also has like workbooks for it and so on. So what she does, what I try to implement in therapy, is that you think about the times that you were physically intimate with someone, um, and you think about the times that were really, really great, like somehow, I don't know, they were specifically hot or you felt specifically relaxed. But anyway, whatever shows up in your like top five, and you write them down, and then you start comparing like what are the common factors in this. Is it the place? Is it a specific feeling? Is it what you were wearing? Maybe like it could be anything really. But you find common factors, and that gives you a pretty good clue of where you're going, because we're all individual in what we like and what's like, yeah, what kind of rings the bell. And I always find that to be very helpful, actually, because you get like a strategic way of figuring this out.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that one. Yeah, I've just got to think about 5 times that I've had sex in my life.
Yeah. Well, it does take some time.
I have to go back to fucking 2007.
Well, my memories go back. Yeah, no worries. I'm guessing, yeah, that happened.
Yeah, I like that one. So identifying. So with this down, top 5 sexual experiences. What are the commonalities in that?
Yeah.
And then I was going to say it's something judgy. Then I was going to say, and then good luck. See what it spits out at the end.
Well, yeah, but honestly, yes. Like I remember doing this for
I
the
was
first time.
buried underground on every one of
I,
them.
I did have like a little moment of surprise of like, oh, really? Okay. I mean, there were factors that I was well aware of, but there were also factors that I wasn't. And it's like we're all dealing with some sort of like shame and upbringing and whatever. So it will touch sensitive spots, surely, because that's why it works. That's why it's hard.
Can you guess my next question?
No.
Would you willing to share what those things were for you? Don't feel pressured.
I was well aware that not all of them, but a few of them were in public settings. So that's a factor for me. It's like could get caught doing something forbidden,
Chicks love that shit.
Why though? Why? Questions why? But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's one thing that I can remember. And then just one thing that I can remember that was kind of like, was it was kind of a power play always in it. So just very like just psychologically that my sex partners would just say stuff that I don't know, maybe is a little messed up. I'd be like, oh, where it's not degrading. I think that was the surprising part for me, was that I'm actually not a BDSM chick, which I would have supposed before. And I was like, no, actually, that's not it. I'm not into them degrading me or belittling me or all of that. That's actually, I don't think that's hot. But there is something in there where it establishes kind of a hierarchy, just verbally. I don't know what that is, but it's just something that was common, is that people would say stuff like, I don't know, I don't want to share the really intimate stuff, so I have to think about the things that I can share. Yeah, I mean, really just stuff like, oh, you like that? Yeah. Do you want me to do more of that? Like simple stuff. And then if that gets like more and more into that direction, more and more it works, kind of. So it is kind of a power play. Yeah, really. And I did not that was just an interesting insight for me.
Didn't realize. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. What about?
But also, wait, I want to add something wholesome to that, just to complete that. One thing that I also was not aware of before is that a lot of my excitement comes from the other person's excitement. Like 80% is the better the time the other person has, the better my time. you know.
Interesting. That's so interesting. Yeah, I've got my little bro therapist head on now, thinking, oh, I wonder why that is. All comes back to childhood, though, doesn't it?
Oh, it
That's
does. Yeah. Oh
that's what's
God.
so fucked up about this stuff. All
Exactly.
your
That's
sexual
that's what's not
stuff.
that, because I think like people who have no context to that, they probably will be like, okay, but then you have your context and you're like, "Ugh, gross."
Mm. Can you give me some examples? Not this is not on you, don't worry. Can you give me some examples of kinks or desires
Mhm.
in which people, perhaps in your practice or just day-to-day life, whatever, have felt a lot of shame around, and maybe someone in the audience is likely to have this kink as well.
Mhm.
That that question was so long, I've forgotten the start of it. Um, some examples of those kinks in which people feel shame around and which actually are okay, that we can
Yeah.
breathe out into the air.
Yeah, there's the absolute most prominent example is violence of any sort. I think that's the most common thing, that even though you would think that the public discourse has opened up so far about this, that people would actually relax into that, but like so many people that I work with still feel like a very intense shame about, like, yeah, wanting to get your ass slapped basically. And they just have
Mm-hmm.
like, the more specific the scenario is, the more shame it brings up for them. That's something that I noticed. So getting your ass slapped isn't very shameful for the very most people anymore. But someone expressing like, I don't know, yeah, like, I want you to slap my face and, like, tell me I'm a dirty bitch. That's something that brings up shame for a lot of people. And if I could collectively inform everyone, I would tell them that um, that is something that is emancipating to people. Like, you must not be ashamed of it because it does not serve the purpose that you think it does,
Sorry,
right?
what does emancipate mean?
It means it brings you from being in a passive, victimized position into an active position, right? So the classical example is someone who has experienced violence in their childhood or early youth, and then they act out like violent scenarios in their sex life. So, and violent really just meaning, I don't know, yeah, just get your cheeks clapped or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and so what you're doing is that you are reliving these situations, but now you're in charge. You have a certain kind of power here, right? Nothing is happening without your consent. You are actively seeking this out, which means you are the one who is in power.
Mm. So, and do you think it's a little bit like so if you did like let's say you did some sort of form of trauma therapy and you went back to your younger self and you imagined yourself as a child, like they do this in what, like tapping and those type of therapies, and you go back and then you kind of like see that child and then you go and then you try and like give the child what it maybe needed in that position, and you're trying to rewire those neural connections, right?
Yeah.
And what he's saying is you can do the same thing or a similar thing. No.
No, no, because what
Okay.
I've noticed is that people will do that, like inner child work with me, or reparenting, or whatever you want to call
Mhm.
it, and it will not change their like sexual desires, because the
Oh no, I
experience
wasn't
that
meaning
they
it, but
have
it would
with
it.
them
Do you
today-
think it's therapeutic to them and kind of lessen
yeah,
because
yeah,
you're putting yourself in that state that the child was in or whatever, or but like you say, them having some agency and able
yeah,
to enjoy the situation
yeah.
because they're in
Well, it
control.
can be, not necessarily is. It might just be that you're kind of reliving that state. Really depends on like your emotional state while you're doing it.
Mm,
But that's very individual. I'm just saying that it's not something that you need to be ashamed of.
yeah.
Um, Also, one thing that it serves for people who have, for example, no experience with like physical violence, it also, like these typical rape fantasies, for example, that also can serve a purpose of, if I have a very strong um, shame around my own desires, like just being horny is attached to a lot of shame, then I will need to find a workaround that shame, because if I'm extremely ashamed, I can't have sex, right? It's just
Mm,
like it's just doesn't work. It's like when you're really really disgusted, it just doesn't. The system is just kind of blocking it. Same happens with like an extreme amount of shame. But what you can do is that you imagine or you enact in like some sort of role play your partner being so aroused by your sheer presence that they kind of force themselves onto you, and it takes out your own desire entirely out of the equation. So that's something that it also does, and also no need to be ashamed of that, because you've just worked around not being ashamed, so don't bring that up again.
yeah. Are there any others?
Hmm?
Any other particular um, kinks or?
Mm, that's the most common ones that I can think of. And then I don't know if it's like something very specific, like material, for example. Um, it's not as common, but also sometimes people have that. That's also just really nothing to be ashamed of, because it's just a sensual thing. It's just about like you enjoy touching things in your daily life as well. It's the same thing. It's just like a higher level of arousal.
Yeah, I like textures.
See. Textures
Okay,
are nice.
if someone okay, this is a little bit self-indulgent, but if a man, a woman, whatever, fill in your option. If a man buys his wife, girlfriend, whatever, uh, sexy outfits
Hmm.
for Christmas,
Hmm.
is that selfish?
You mean if that has not been addressed before?
Uh, yeah, just like kind of like, oh yeah, I thought this might be fun. I think,
I mean, as I explained earlier, anything is selfish at the very bottom of it.
yeah, we're all
I
selfish.
I wouldn't mind professionally. I see no problem in that. um, but if your partner is upset with it, you'll have to figure out why. And then I'm guessing it's because you haven't put in effort into the other aspects of intimacy. And then just doing this one blunt gesture is not going to work in your favor.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose that kind of thing as well. It's almost like highlighting like Happy Christmas, our sex is bad.
Maybe it's a little bit like Germany. There's this joke about the husband giving his wife a like an anti-aging lotion for Christmas, where
Yeah.
they're just like some subtitles to it, you know.
Mm,
So I'm guessing, yeah, and because but it can be very individual, you know. There are people who feel great in like sexy underwear,
mm.
and then they might be happy with that, and other people just do not feel comfortable in it and just feel, yeah, a certain kind of pressure of like, I don't like our sex life, you'll have to do something about it, because all I'm
Yeah.
doing is buying you something to make it better.
Yeah. And maybe like in that example, someone who does that maybe like doesn't have the tools to be able to actually communicate it in a high level way. Where it's just
Hmm.
kind of like, here you go.
Yeah.
Maybe, but
I
yeah.
frequently get that question of someone of people asking me if they can like prepay a therapy session for someone else, and I think it's the
Mm.
same thing of like, um, we're having a problem, but I think you need to work on it.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not. It's just not a great message, really.
It's not, is it? No.
Mm.
Let's talk about wanking.
Okay. Yeah.
You and I had you put something on your story a few
Mm.
months ago, and I said that I wanted to talk to you about it. It just popped into my head then, and I can't remember what it was. It was something around. Yeah, it was like masturbation, shame, um, using it as a way to like self-soothe, something
Yeah.
around that.
Yeah. I remember. Yeah. 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 I said that masturbation, but also partner sex, is just an incredibly effective way to self-soothe, and therefore it makes perfectly sense if people develop like compulsory behavior around it if they lack other tools.
Mm.
I was probably saying it in a more like concentrated way, but that was the main thought.
Yeah, because it was basically on like the masturbation point. It was um, like that can be an option for self care. Like if that makes you feel better, like go
Hmm.
for it. And I don't know if my position on this has changed somewhat, um, but my sort of long-standing thoughts have been uh, if you're presented with an emotional feeling that you an emotion sorry an emotion that you don't want or feeling that you don't want, and then you go like, I feel bad, um I'll avoid the emotion, I'll stick some porn and I'll have a wank.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I feel bad. I want to feel better. This works.
Yeah, and I've always said though that it's kind of like no different to I feel bad, I'll have a glass of wine,
Hmm.
because it's avoidance.
Yeah.
And the issue, and then when we're talking about addiction, I guess, is where it becomes kind of I don't know if toxic is the correct term, but where it becomes like not the best idea is when you associate that thing with the negative, right? So I only jerk off when I feel like shit.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, that action becomes associated with shame uh,
Yeah.
and then obviously, and then you're not actually dealing with the thing, whatever that is arising.
Yeah. And it
No.
might also be that unconsciously you're seeking back actually very difficult emotions. Um, so you do actually worsen your inner state with it. So the shame
Yeah.
that you talked about, right? That might be something that was very present in your upbringing. And you kind of relive that every time. You know, this moment of like you jerked off, you pause the porn, and then there's this moment of like emptiness, and you feel like a little bit like a lot of clients describe like a sort of disgust with
Oh yeah.
themselves.
Yeah. Like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah. And that's like this shame that you were brought up with, um, combined with self-soothing in like a rather unhealthy way.
Yeah. And like, where was I going with this? Let's go back. Let's go back. Let's go back. So, so I've had the same conversation with like girlfriends, or whatever,
Mhm.
and I do find that for some reason, and it's maybe just a basic biological thing, like sweep all the trauma, whatever life experience to the side. Imagine it's just a fucking blank canvas. Girls seem to be able to just be like, woo! Like, just another
Yeah.
wank. Let's keep going. Like, fucking living
Mhm.
my best life. I've ordered a fucking pizza. I've had 5 wanks. It's Friday night. Um,
They are statistics to porn consumption, and I think it's linked to that, honestly.
yeah, because like, so with guys, because we have this weird thing that's within us where it's like this post nut clarity that they talk about,
Mhm.
where like you would, as soon as you climax,
Mhm.
you just go, oh, fuck off, like whatever it is.
Yeah.
I fuck it. It's funny. I'll talk about it. So like, if I'm watching porn, I'm like, oh my god, I'm like that. She's the fucking most beautiful person I've ever seen. Like, and I'm like, she is amazing. Wow, fucking hell. And then
Mhm.
as soon as I finish, I'm like, fucking bitch, turn it off. I'm disgusted by her. What's that noise? What's it like? Do you know what I mean? What's that noise you're making? Like, it's fucking
You sound like
ridiculous.
a fucking
Whoa!
hamster.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when I was like growing up, and like the first few times or whatever. Obviously, like I had no idea about all this stuff, and like I would finish, and I would just be like, I'd stand up, walk out my room. She's still in the bedroom, and I'd just go play on the drums.
Mm.
I just like it was weird. Like
Gotta do
all I
something.
wanted, yeah. Like at the point of climax, like in a split second, it would just be like music, guitars,
Mhm.
BMX. Weird.
Mhm.
In this like little moment of just like fucking hell, I love that so much. Weird.
Mhm.
And is it like maybe it's to do with like dopamine, like the motivation to go out and seek? Like you've done your thing now.
Mhm.
Go out into the fucking world and find something else.
Yeah, but also like There's one thing about body fluids that I've noticed is that a lot of people associate body fluids with like parts of themselves that they feel ashamed for. And I feel like that's a factor. Is so like the people that have to shower right after having sex, or yeah, like actually just this like, oh, there's I don't know, there's jizz, I have to wipe it away immediately, or like all of these things, because technically it's not doing anything bad, right, if it just sits there.
Yeah, but it can get the fuck
Yeah,
off.
just like kind of sticky. But that would have like a solid 10 minutes until it gets actually uncomfortable, like just by its nature.
And after 10 minutes, I'll be ready to go anyway, so I won't mind if it's on my chest. I'll be back in sexy mode.
Right. But so that's just something that if you pay some attention to that, how you actually feel about that, it can tell you a little bit about how you feel about yourself, about your body producing these fluids, and they come out of you in like an uncontrollable kind of behavior. So it really brings you to the very depth of your mind, of your, I don't know, of your psyche, basically, right? Because this is something that is just kind of, this is just your body doing its thing, right? There is a point in climax where you're not stopping what's happening. It's just, you're out of control. Your mind is out of control. And lots of people just have so much shame around just that. And if you're experiencing that with another person, then you're also being perceived while that happens. That can be extremely uncomfortable for some people. So, from my perspective, but because this is what I deal with every day, I'd say, like, I'd probably think, like, hey, Jason, is that very uncomfortable for you? And are you seeking out something where you feel capable again, where you're doing something that you're good at?
Say more. What does that mean?
So, you're smart. Like most people are smart.
Thank you.
So if you get into a situation where you feel, yeah, just kind of less capable, so you have developed a sense of self-worth around cognitive abilities, like we all did, because that's how our society works. It's like you're good when you're a good thinker, you're smart when you're a good thinker. Like that's what is that's what society wants to see in people. But then there are parts of you that where that whole mechanism, everything that you have built up, does not work. Not in that way, right? Not saying that it's specifically doing anything bad for you, but you're just, your head, your mind is not in control of that situation. Just not. Climax is the opposite of having smart thoughts. You know? You're being rapidly brought back into this body and like nothing else. It's really just and like, and then after that thoughts come back, bing, and they're like, oh no, wait, that's not okay, because we've built this whole structure for a reason. We can't just not have that, like not have that. And so that just kind of makes you feel, I don't know, guilty, shameful, I don't know what it is. Very unique feelings, but it's something that happens for a lot of people. And then they're kind of like, there is the proof of me not being cognitively in control of that situation, which is my jizz, for example. Yeah, it might just be a lot of sweat on my bed or something. Some people have to change their sheets right after they had sex, stuff like that. Or it's like I can feel it on my body. I can smell it. I smell like people smell like fucking when they fucked. It's a thing. And then they need to take a shower immediately because no.
Yeah, it makes me think. I suppose it's just coming back to this term that I love, is this post-nut clarity thing, because the last long-term relationship that I was in, I was well, I think I was in love, and yeah, it was like the first time where, don't get me wrong, like afterwards, something in me is saying, get up and do something. But I was able to just like relax there, maybe have a cuddle. And like, yeah, like I say, not fully happy with that situation. Like, I would have loved to got up and done a fucking marathon or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like,
What was different?
What was different?
Yeah. Why was that different than being with other women?
Fucking hell. I don't know. I just loved her, I think. Yeah. I don't know. It's a weird subject because like she wasn't right for me. I wasn't right for her actually. But at the time I was like so convinced. And sometimes I think to myself, it was just attraction. You know, I was just infatuated. But then that makes me also think like those moments like straight after climax is where like that's the real truth. Because like certainly as a guy, you know, like this is what we always say, like if to find out if you're interested in a girl, like really interested, you know, after you have sex you'll know. Straight after.
Yeah.
Because you just have this clear like, oh, maybe I'm not into this person or whatever. And unfortunately that's really sad as well, because obviously that can be hurtful for a lot of people.
Yeah. But it makes sense. Yeah. I mean, you're in sort of a very intense hormonal rush before you're climaxing, and then afterwards, if that's like taken out of the equation, then you have a different kind of view on a person. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then like with this person, it was kind of like, oh, yeah, like I will let her put her head on my chest, cuddle her. I don't feel like I need to get up and go to the bathroom, wash myself, all that stuff, and that you're saying, and long
Is it
time
okay
ago.
for her to see the dirty animal that Jason is?
Yeah, exactly. I think that was it. Yeah, like fucking hell. Yeah, I wasn't shaving my chest back then. That's a new thing. That's a new thing that I did. I did the other week. But like I have a lot of photographs with my top off doing exercise, as you well know, and most of the time I'm sweating. So if you've got a hairy chest, it looks disgusting. So, anyways, I just brought it back from like extremely intimate conversation to just ego and
Gross chest hair.
me and my bullshit.
That's good. However, you find back into your comfort.
What's something you changed your mind on recently? Or it could be maybe
I barely ever change my mind.
Okay.
might
Or a
also have
study,
something to do with autism.
or it could
If
be like a
if I've
scientific
made up my
study.
mind, I've definitely thought about it. um, hmm. This isn't very recent, but something that's definitely changed in my worldview is coming from this Darwinian idea of what's it called? The survival of the fittest.
Mhm.
To there are actually very many different survival strategies that are all successful, and how that breaks down into very small nuances also. And at this point, I believe this to be true for humans as well in their like development of personality and all that. So just to give like an actual example of that, in the most obvious cases, it's something like if it was the survival of the fittest, then the sloth shouldn't exist. It's the opposite of all of these ideas. Just has slowed down the whole metabolism so that it has to come down from trees only like once a week to shit, because
Yeah.
everything else would be too dangerous. And so nothing about that really speaks or like fits into that Darwinian idea. And the same goes small scale for sperm. For example, we in school or just like educational systems, we learn about this one specific type of sperm. That's this like round headed with like a little tail. But that's just one
Alpha
kind of,
sperm.
you know,
Fuck yeah.
yeah. But there's
That's
just one kind
me.
of sperm. But that's only just one kind of sperm. There's like all sorts of different kinds of sperm. That's super fascinating to me. They
Isn't
have
like
like,
it's like the Tour de France, isn't it? There's like other sperm that are meant to be like, you go, man. Like I'll hold back. Like
yeah,
you,
yeah. There's sperm that is specifically shaped to nest in the sides of the vagina and to like rest there for days, so that when the other sperm has died, they come up and take their chances.
just like you go. I'll hold it back.
No, but not even like their purpose is not entirely just to hold space for the others, but to actually sit the others out and then go for the egg.
Oh, so it's like kind of like, oh yeah, like like I've got you, bro. Like you get yourself up there, but then I'm like, I'm gonna fucking swim upstream myself
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll just wait until you are tired. And then
so fucking interesting, isn't
it
it?
is. And there's like all sorts of different sperm that all have kind of different strategies on how to be successful. And so you take that from biology or zoology, zoology. Jesus Christ,
Zoologically.
I guess. You can take that into psychology. It's the same thing where people just have different strategies on how to be successful, and all of these strategies somehow work.
Mm.
There is no like, my perspective now is that there are no objective attributes that are more successful than others.
Yeah, it's like fitness doesn't necessarily mean fitness, but it's
Yeah.
still fitness. Like the sloth, the the sloth is still, even though it's slow, like it is the fittest. Yeah, it is what's the term? Uh
It is
Biologically
successful.
fit and big.
It is
Yeah,
successful. It reproduces and keeps its sword alive. You know,
it's
it's
able to conserve energy and
yeah.
all the rest of it, and just kind of it works for the sloth. I do like a sloth. Have you seen a sloth in the wild?
In the wild, no. In the zoo.
I have.
Aww.
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to do all my traveling in my 20s.
Ah.
Actually, I've seen a lot of them on the floor. It's really sad though, because like when I was in Brazil, but there's obviously a lot of deforestation, so
Mm.
you see them kind of just like
Mm.
they are adorable.
Yeah, they're amazing, actually.
I've got some cards in front of me with questions.
Yeah.
There's 4 cards. Pick a number from 1 to 4.
3.
Good choice. What is the hardest thing you've ever done in your life?
Ugh. Well, I gave birth twice. Pretty hard. um. Hmm. That honestly might be it. And then there were incident, like I remember one incident in sort of a group therapy setting, and they did like this exercise where people were lying on their back and they were supposed to like move their hips through the air, and then at some point everyone was just like thumping on the floor and like screaming and all that, and it was kind of it kind of hit me out of nowhere. It was kind of like re-traumatizing.
Oh.
And I kind of immediately started crying and I couldn't stop, just couldn't stop. I was just like sobbing and it was really uncomfortable. And then I wanted to go away, but I didn't. Instead, I went to the bathroom. It was kind of like, well, if I can't do anything, I'll just pee. And I went to the bathroom and but yeah, like sticking with like, no, I'll stay here. I'll sit this out was definitely extremely hard for me. And it did have it was rewarding because my therapist actually followed me into the bathroom uh, to see if I was okay, and did that in like a very that was very important, I think, to the experience, is that he did not do that in like a very, he wasn't sympathetic about it. He was just kind of like, you good? I was like, no, I'm not. Say, okay, are you safe? Yeah, I think so. All right, I'll see you outside. That's a key experience in my life, I would say, where that was extremely difficult. And because I had to stay there for, it felt like 2 hours, probably was 30 minutes.
In the bathroom?
No, in the room with these people
Oh.
doing their weird thing.
What did you learn about yourself from that experience?
Very specifically, I learned that you or I'll stay in the reality that I formed in my childhood until I don't. So my childhood reality was that I could do nothing about the situation. So I would dissociate and go somewhere else. And if I want to make the experience that I am an adult now and things have changed in my life, then I'll have to do differently. Would not recommend though.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. 1 to 3.
1.
What is your deepest fear?
In my head, I'm just breaking it down and breaking it down. That's why it takes so long.
Take your time.
And I think it really just comes down to that all the things that my father said about me are true. That's scary.
What did he say about you?
That I was a disappointment, that I am a failure, that I can only fail because I am my mother's daughter, that I am disgusting. The list is long. But yeah, that's in me. And in my head, I can say that's not true, but I'll always be scared that it is.
How does that make you feel right now?
Shit. No,
You're
it's
welcome.
Okay. No, it's okay. It makes it easier. Like, I don't feel great. I can feel that fear, but it's not all over me. It's here. It's a little difficult to breathe. I notice that I become smaller. It's not a great feeling. Does give me some relief that I can express that at this point in my life. Because part of that being a very present fear is not sharing that. Like, it was ultimately more true if I would not share that with people.
Was this? Do you recall this as like one incident or a multitude of incidents, or was there a particular time that you heard this that seemed to really set stone that fear?
No, just hearing it over and over and over
Over and
again.
over.
Over and over. I think if it was one time, it'd just be like, weird, you know? But hearing it over and over again, and clearly my father would not just say that, he would embody these thoughts. Not
Why do you think he what? Why do you think he said those things?
those projections of his own fears, mainly. So my father's sole identity was built on performing as an intelligent, attractive, capable man. That was his identity. So anything that would go against that was extremely dangerous to him. And as a child, for a lot of people, it happens that their children are the extension of themselves. So the children will have to uphold the picture that I have built of myself. And I think that was true for my father. And then he had this very difficult relationship with my mother, who was literally the opposite of that. She did not have to prove. And I was a product of them. I think that was just like really difficult for both of them.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling, that, isn't it? Where maybe not as direct as that, but perhaps most people can connect with a time in which, certainly if your parents divorced, a time in which a certain trait that you show reminds one parent of the other, and they don't like that about you.
And you can like see it in their face, can sense it in their behavior, that you are a reminder of this other person also. Yeah. I think that's a common experience for a lot of people with like divorced parents. And
So what would if I take you back to like the first time you heard that, or the most prominent time that you heard that onslaught? How old were you? Don't know.
Don't know. As I said, like my memory is really bad.
Mm.
The
What
earliest
would
thing I can remember of my father specifically saying something to me was probably like 8 or 9.
I had 8 in my head for some reason.
Uh,
Yeah, I think that's like 8. Like, yeah, it's quite a salient time, isn't it? What
yeah,
would
it's when you start understanding a little bit more about the world and around you, I guess. Yeah.
what would 36-year-old Nadja say to 8-year-old Nadja?
She did say it to her that you're right.
Who's
So
right?
you're all right.
Oh,
Like
you're
you're
all right.
fine. You're fine. Like
Yeah.
that was the most important message that was there. Yeah. It's also like for me, I wasn't 36, but also in like adult life doing these like this like traveling back to your inner self and all that. And when I did that, I think the really most important factor in it was like, hey, wait, that kid is fine. It's a pretty brilliant child. Seems like all these adults are actually just kind of shit.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. 1 to 2.
1.
You like this one? I thought you would like this one.
Mm.
What is your favorite sound?
Sound? Oh. That's weird because I have like very clear answers for all other senses. Sound, I'm like, Favorite sound?
Do you like Rammstein?
No, absolutely. I used to live underneath the lead singer, actually. Was a very nice
What, in the
man.
same bed as him? Or
No. Just the apartment underneath him.
it weirdly came on my playlist this morning. Literally, I was in the shower and I'm like, "What's this?" It's like Deutschland,
Yeah,
and I
yeah,
was like, "Oh, getting prepped for our conversation."
yeah. No, it's like that's weird to me. I don't understand those vibes. No, it's going to be some less invasive sound. I will say when I'm in a room of people and we're singing together, and at some point I can only hear my voice, and I'm hitting like a specific note, and it's just kind of like it does, like it's a certain vibration in my head. I like that.
Okay, so it's a literal certain note.
Yeah.
This is so autistic. So,
Yeah, because my first thought was like, oh, I bet other people think like birds, but I find the sound of birds extremely invasive. It's cool, but it's extremely noisy.
do you know which note or frequency it is?
No, I'm really bad at like I've never
Have you
learned.
got any musical talent? That's such an interesting answer, by the way. I did not expect
Really?
that. Yeah.
I mean, I still enjoy singing a lot, and I've tried learning a couple of instruments, but only like goofy instruments. Never make an effort to learn an actual instrument, only like ukulele and the harmonium and there's like stuff like that. But can now for sure say not talented.
I couldn't comment. I've not heard you. I'm refinding my love of music actually, just at the moment. It's really beautiful. Not playing
It's
it.
amazing. It's
Not pl- I'm
amazing.
still not
Yeah.
playing it, but that might come later. But
No, but
yeah.
having a tool of like self-expression that is just like with creating art or something, it's just there's something magical about expressing like very authentic parts of yourself, and yeah, it's like having that, and it's very joyful actually.
Yeah, definitely. I I went to had an event in the middle of the country, a high rocks thing 2 weeks ago. And it's basically like 4 hours drive, 4 hours back. I stayed over, but quite normally I would always have podcasts on or books. You know, it's such a long journey. I need to be in cognitive mode. I need to be constantly.
Mm.
And I got a new car fairly recently, and it's got a good stereo system. I think that's a big part of it. And I've just really got, and anyway, I listened to music all the way there and all the way back, and I loved every. I didn't for 1 minute think, "Oh, I'm in the car, I'm bored." I
Yeah,
just like over and I'm like, "Oh, like this one, yeah," and I'm like, "Fucking yes," and I'm like singing my heart out. I'm
yeah,
drumming on the steering wheel, and it was just like just such a beautiful journey,
yeah.
you know, metaphorically as well. And you know, it's obviously it's a bit of a cliche, but just music, there is so much magic.
Are you
It's
gone?
so sacred.
Ah,
No, can you?
yep. Now again.
Yeah, there's something just so incredible about it, and because I was
Hmm.
thinking like, can I experience joy on my own listening to music? And it's almost like, in a weird way, it's almost like the way that porn is to sex. It's like listening to a recording of music is to like an ancient thing of being around a campfire and people with drums.
Yeah,
Like I feel like, do you know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it's
because it sends you through all the possible emotions. Also, if like you have this base, it's amazing that it will just like boom, connect to you.
yeah, and it's like if you stop and think, because you kind of like, oh, this is kind of weird. Like I'm on my own, but yeah, it's magic. So cool. So I
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprised if I didn't want to maybe start playing music again at some point. But it might
Hmm.
take me a while to get there. All right, last question on on these cards.
Hmm.
If you're on your deathbed and you could only leave one lesson behind, what would it be?
Show yourself to be perceived. That's it.
Mm, be authentic.
It's the only way. Is the only way that we can form authentic relationships. The only way that we can lean into the experience of life.
Mm.
If not authentic, then don't.
You know, there's this whole thing about deathbed.
Mm.
Um, you know, wishes of the dying. I wish I'd worked less.
Hmm.
Um, I take issue with it.
Why? How?
So, how can let me just formulate this. So, right, the people who are on the deathbeds that are surrounded by people. If you're on the deathbed, right, and you're surrounded by your family, and how can I explain? Let's say, like, okay, give the example of like someone who's quite wealthy. They did well in their life, got all the family around them. And their regret is probably going to be, I wish I'd worked less, because I've got all this beautiful family, and I wish I'd spent more time with them.
Hmm.
But also, maybe part of the reason they have such a beautiful family and a stable life and stuff is because that guy worked his ass off, climbed social status, found himself an amazing woman. And do you know what I mean? Like, so it's like
Yeah.
this bias towards these type of people, and then and then maybe to say the opposite, or so someone, family around them dying poor, or not massively wealthy. It's not like they're gonna say, I wish I'd worked harder. I wish I'd not spent as much time with you.
Yeah.
I wish I'd I wish I'd been in the office more.
Yeah.
It's not like, I don't know, like, and I'm not meaning to be disrespectful. What I mean is, like, and also, this is probably my main point. What about the people who weren't interviewed, who
Mm.
didn't have anyone around them,
Yeah.
who had no one there at the end, and they're thinking, I wish I'd fucking worked harder. I wish I'd. Do you know what I mean? I wish I'd. Do you know what I mean? Like,
I bet there's people dying who think like, I wish I would have convinced more people of what a great stud I am.
well, yeah, exactly, and yeah, it's just I haven't thought about it for quite some time, so you can probably imagine that's why I was trying to kind of like think my way through it. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
just like, maybe it's not like I get it. Like, don't just work all your life, and family and stuff is beautiful. But what if you're not in a situation where you end up having a family because because you didn't get off your ass, because you didn't turn the Xbox off, because you didn't, because you
yeah,
left stuff on the table.
yeah,
And I think, but there's a counter to every narrative, isn't there? To every
yeah.
main point, like, there's always going to be a counter.
But that's what I'm like. I think that's also my thought. Like, I don't think there's a universal truth of what makes people satisfied with how they spend their time that they were given. People want different things for different reasons. I think it's really just like the one thing that everyone can achieve is, kind of staying true to who you are. And if that is someone who needs that confirmation from your surrounding, and that's okay, I guess. If you can, you know. So I'm thinking about, I have a friend who just as a person to me is like the most social creature I've met in my whole life. And that is just because like he's just so authentic with all his flaws. He's so open about it. And he's open about the parts that are ashamed about it, you know? And he's just very whatever he will do in his life, he'll be okay with it in the very end. And I think that's the factor. I think we're focusing on like achieving something out there, or the most of us do, when it's actually really just like it's like just living it. If you're living it, you'll be okay with it, you know.
Yeah, it's a weird one. It's like, it's almost like for me, like, I know that money and success probably won't make me happy.
But it'll give you a baseline to be relaxed.
Yeah, but I like I'll find that out for myself. Thank you very much. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like the successful people. Oh yeah, like you don't want all this money. It doesn't like. I'll get there, and then I'll let you know.
My mom used to say, because we come from like a very poor family, and I remember my mom saying like, "Oh, stuff like money doesn't make you happy. That's stuff rich people say."
Mm,
I was like, "Yeah, you never hear a poor person say that."
yeah,
It's like, no, no. I mean, it doesn't give you extra, but it gives you basic safety.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. And yeah, and then there's this weird kind of like feeling that I know that I'm driven by my insecurities. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And I know that's kind of a dangerous game, but I'm like okay with
yeah.
it.
I say, yeah. I mean, no. No. Like we do that. We
Mm,
do that. That's why I said, like, when you really dial down on your motivation in any part, you come back to like insecurities and like, I don't know. We all have narcissistic traits for a reason. Like, we need to survive somehow. Makes sense.
mm,
And then that's where I think the circle closes. Is um, that's all part of the game. It's all part of it, and it's not your how do you say, you don't need to exit the game to get through it, right? um and it's Jack Cornfield says that. I love that very much, where he says all humans have one shared instinct, which is to survive, and all humans have one shared truth that we don't.
mm,
Right? But we won't stop trying to survive, and it wouldn't make sense.
yeah. I think it's interesting that you mentioned Jack Cornfield as well. So I feel like it's always like this Buddhist thing that's fucking coming after me. Do you know what I mean? Like middle
Just
way,
it's solid,
you
it's
know.
solid.
Do you know what I mean? Like, oh, don't be attached to things. I'm like,
Yeah, but
um,
don't be too attached to non-attachment also.
yeah. Like, what do they say? There's nothing more egotistical than trying to get rid of your ego.
Yeah.
I think Alan Watts. That's an Alan Watts saying.
I love Alan Watts. I love me a chain smoking smart guy.
Yeah, alcoholic.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, what a contradiction in itself. Like,
Yeah.
you know, people revere this guy, Alan Watts, like, and like in his personal life looked like he was a bit of a mess.
A bit. A little bit, maybe.
Yeah, just pissed out of his head all the time and stuff. And yeah, um, right, I'm going to start to wrap things up shortly.
Mhm.
Anything we've not spoken about that you think would be either you would like to speak about or you think would be useful to anyone listening?
Mm, something that just comes up in my work very often is people being unable to draw the boundaries of this is where I end and this is where you start, and how it's very difficult for some people to comprehend that this is the baseline for intimacy. Is so metaphorically speaking, my body ends somewhere, your body ends somewhere, and when we touch is where the intimacy happens, right? Just like on a physical level. But that means that my body has to end somewhere and your body has to end somewhere. And emotionally is the same thing. People tend to emotionally merge with each other and they lose the understanding of this is what I want, this is what you want. Instead, this is what we want and this is what we don't want. And you can hear that when people say, oh, but I can't do that because my partner doesn't want to do that. My partner doesn't like it when I do that. So I can't do that. Just being in this state of like, I cannot. Yes, you can. You can upset your partner and it can still all be part of a very healthy relationship. Actually might be the healthiest part. Being like, I know this upsets you, but I'll do it. Right? And people do this in their everyday life over and over again with like very small things, but it adds up. And that's where it comes down, where it will sneak itself into your sex life, into your emotional shared space. You are actually not having a stable, safe relationship. You're establishing the opposite, where it is not safe to have differing opinions, to have differing needs. That's not a safe relationship model. And I think that's something that the very most people just somehow don't seem to understand until I give them this 3-minute monologue.
I was just sort of pondering on why that is, and it's like, I think it's such a huge investment cost. Look, to find someone, even someone that isn't even that great, even to find a mediocre relationship is still difficult. And it's like that sunk cost fallacy of, oh, I just don't want to upset her. Like, fucking hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
me just saying, this is what I think, these are my needs, and the idea that she'll go, well, I'm leaving you, or he, whatever. I think that's it, isn't it? It's just that so many people are afraid of being alone, and the cost of being authentic.
Yeah.
And this is why we end up in these people pleasing modes.
Yeah.
Because I always think it's
or entirely avoidant, right? That's the other side of the coin also.
Yeah. Like, I always think when you're single, it's really easy for me to be super authentic right now because I've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
So I can talk about my fucking whatever, weird wanking stuff on a podcast, or just be unapologetically and absolutely Jason. But then as soon as you've got stakes in the game, there's a stake in it. I remember thinking this in my last relationship, when I started, I was like, fucking hell, I like this girl, and then it's a totally different feeling. But what's the point if you're not going to be authentic?
Someone's not going to be with you. period. Like they're going to be with an image that you have consciously or unconsciously created. So you will still be alone, technically. That's the problem in it. And I always think about, like, because that takes some sort of like bravery, courage to stay in contact, be authentically yourself, because yeah, it's fucking scary to lose people, or to be rejected for who you are. That's fucking painful. It is much more painful than being rejected for an image that you have created of yourself. And then I always think about, like, we had this children's book of my son that we read in it was a nice book, but there was like one part in it where I was like, I'm going to write this on the wall in the kids' room, because there's this boy who's supposed to be damn, I forgot. Doesn't matter. Like, anyway, he's supposed to be very brave and courageous, but he isn't. And then he has this friend who's technically supposed to be like a princess, but she's not in it. She doesn't like it. She wants to do like the fighting stuff and all that. And so she basically always saves his ass in like critical situations. And then he asks her and is like, why are you always this brave? And she says, well, bravery isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the things still when you're scared. And I'm always like, yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's like, about authentic relationship, you'll still have to do it. And you'll just be scared.
Yeah. And often it's a signal that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If it's if there's some discomfort. All right. Before we finish up, I've got this little thing that I've started doing at the end. So I want you to think of a question or a reflection that it doesn't have to be like a universal thing, but it's maybe something you right now that you want to you should ask yourself at the start of the day. But it could also be for like the audience, your audience as well. I started doing it with like one for the audience, one for you. But just recently people have been going, oh, it's kind of applies to everyone. So what would that question or reflection be?
I have a question that I am in several year long process to answer. And I would love other people to join in. Is, if you peel off all the layers, if I peel off all the layers which define me in relation to others, what's left? So if I take off anything that is me providing for others, that is me in a dynamic with others, if I take all of that away, what's left? And as I said, I don't have an answer.
It's like kind of taking the ego off. Is that where? Is it slightly different to that?
I don't know. The ego has its like. I know that in these mindfulness scenes, they like to talk about the ego. They like to shit talk the ego. I'm not on board with that, because the ego is just. That's also something someone else said. Maybe Jack Kornfield. I don't know. Someone said that the ego is just your sense of self-preservance. So it's just part of your survival strategy. It's not a foe. It's not.
Anthony Trucks, who's been on the podcast, he had this idea, and because I was thinking about ego a lot, and he was like, and previous to the conversation, I was kind of like, well, you know, for example, let's say in an online dating profile, like, oh, well, I do a podcast and I do high rocks or whatever. That's kind of like stuff I do. It's kind of ego, but I'm like, but I am the person who does the thing.
Exactly.
I might not be the gym, but I'm still the guy who goes to the gym, who puts the work in or whatever. And it's like, and Anthony Shook said, it's like, you are the tree, and that like the ego is like the fruits.
Yeah.
So it's like you are producing the fruits, and you know at some point they'll fall off.
Yeah.
But you're still like that center. And I thought it was a really nice way to kind of like make the ego great again. Was that
I like that. I like that very much.
the mega movement?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like that. You know, I have this podcast called The Final Disappointment.
I now know why it's called that name, by the way.
You know?
Well, I don't know. I could guess because you were talking about your childhood, right?
Give me your guess. Give me your guess. That's why I wanted to say it.
Well, you were saying that your biggest fear that you'd be a disappointment to your father.
Yeah.
And then and then I was like, oh, final disappointment. I was like, is there something going on there?
Actually unrelated.
Okay.
But I will dig into that. I bet there's some subconscious stuff going on. No, so there is one Buddhist sect that says enlightenment. So, like, you've heard that people say enlightenment is the ego death, right? And then there's a specific Buddhist sect that says enlightenment still serves the ego, and enlightenment is just the final disappointment of the ego.
Yeah, very good.
I don't know. I've heard that and I found it hilarious when I heard it the first time. That's why it just kind of stuck around with me. Final disappointment.
That's great. You know, I had an ego death experience recently. Here I am with my ego telling you about my ego death experience. But yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. And extremely hard to explain. But yeah, it was just all concept of Jason was not a thing. It was wild. Like we're talking about psychedelics here, just laying the pretext. You had much experience with it? Oh.
I don't know what defines much, but a bit, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and I was sat by this campfire for about, I think it must have been about 2 hours. Didn't talk to anyone. Like I couldn't speak. Like people, because some people were just like laughing and giggling. I'm like, and I was just internal. And I was like, I had my eyes closed. And I remember it was just like this. It was like, it was new. And it was like everything I'd ever known and everyone I'd ever known. The feeling of just, it was like, I felt like I was with my ancestors, like with my past relatives. Like I was with them. Like I couldn't see them, but I could just feel them. It was really, 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 yeah, just, I don't know. Like, I've never been like that kind of mystical. But then part of me is going, oh yeah, well that's just another, it's just another projection of your consciousness, of another illusion. But yeah, it is. And what I found most interesting, not most interesting, but like just all wanting just dissipated. There was no like I didn't touch my phone for like a day or something. Like the whole time, the concept of a phone just made no sense to me. And someone who's on it quite a lot. um, but yeah, I don't know why I brought that up. We were talking about ego, weren't we?
Yeah.
But
So
yeah,
anything that has changed long term for you since then?
I fell back into like ego mode pretty quick.
Mm-hmm.
Although it took me a while. Like even the next day, I was kind of like, I missed Jason. It was weird. Like after a while, it's a bit fucking weird. Like, who am I? All this. Do you know what I mean? I was like, so that the allure back into kind of just like fucking cognitive mode was heavy. But I have noticed just like just feeling a bit more like if everything is a projection. So if right now, like what I'm seeing and experiencing is a projection of my fucking visual cortex and all the rest of it. And if I close my eyes and try and picture anything, you can do it. And it was like I went to visit my nana and granddad's where their ashes are buried. And I've been going there quite a lot. And I sort of just I sit like I'll stand there or whatever, and I'll just kind of like just close my eyes, and I can picture them. And and most people say, "Well, you're just thinking about them," and then I'm like, "But it's something. Like it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Like so, it's like." Where does the imagination and reality intersect, and is there a difference? Space cadet. So yeah, I could guess like it's changed me a little bit, but like I can feel their presence, and that for me has been like, and maybe it's self delusion, but like really quite healing. Because I can go away from going to a graveyard and actually feeling like I've seen them, and I can listen, and I can kind of talk to them, if that makes sense. It's never. I'm getting very personal now, but like, and what's weird is like I've been back. I went a few times, like once a week or something, and that the message was just, don't worry about us, and I was like, where's that coming from? Do you know what I mean? Like that's not nothing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so I don't know. I'm just, yeah, I guess that's been the change. Just kind of like really, like, yeah, things are not as they necessarily appear, and there's some hope in that.
Yeah. It does give you some agency if you take that seriously, if you can maybe you can control the projection. That's something.
Yeah, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to control. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to control the protection. I just want
I do.
to. Yeah.
Sounds interesting. But it also, so when you work in trauma therapy, for example, what becomes clear very soon, I'd say, is that when we wonder about like the objective reality of what people have lived through and what actually happened and what didn't happen, you notice quickly that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter when you're working with that individual, because whatever they feel is real. That's what you're working with, right? You can't work with the reality of the past. It doesn't matter. If they have felt a specific way and they're still feeling a specific way now, then that's reality. So whether it is a projection or not doesn't really matter, because that's what your reality is.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's why imaginary work is so helpful for a lot of people.
Do you have you ever done any manifestation?
I definitely believe that you need to figure out what you want in order to perceive that. And I believe that's kind of manifestation. I've done that with my relationship, for example, which I find interesting, is that I've put a lot of time and effort and also emotional work into figuring out what is it that I want and what is it that I don't want. And then suddenly I started seeing these things in people, right? And then finally, you actually get to make a choice, which you don't if it's kind of like the idea of making an informed choice, right? And I guess currently I'm just kind of, because I'm in this process of feeling like as a person I am changing on like a very deep level, like what you said before with your ego death experience. I kind of felt like, well, yeah, it's kind of similar to what's happening to me right now, is that I'm letting go of a lot of those of what these experiences have formed in my personality. And then I'm kind of like, it's weird to not know who that is, you know? Because it's been such a big part of me. And now I don't really know. Now I don't really know who I am, honestly. At this point in my life, I don't really know who I am. I know my functions, but who I am is a little difficult right now, which is interesting. So I guess I'm manifesting that person, but I don't know who that is yet.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, like so because you've kind of moved through some trauma. Who am I without the trauma?
I have had a very good friend of mine who's, after a couple of years of like therapy and lots of like self-work, he said, you know what kind of sucks? So I'm way less funny. He was like, I was a way funnier, traumatized motherfucker, and that part is kind of gone. And I was like, shit. You know what? Yeah.
That's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, and it goes like is what we are talking about before about like what makes us laugh and the
Hmm.
experience of the pain of being human and making fun
Yeah.
of it. And if you've got no flaws and if you've got no like shit going on, you do kind of like lose something.
Yeah. What's even funny if you're not holding back on something?
Mm,
There is, though, I feel like there is some like a form of just like pure comedy. You know, people that are just like that are just like funny because they're clownish. I think that's just like a very different thing.
mm,
So Jim Carrey wouldn't need to say anything to be funny,
yeah,
right? Or Brona Atkinson. They're just like these clownish people. They're just funny,
yeah.
and I guess
That's
that's
true as
something that's like,
well. I miss that about one of my older relationships, and we were just like basically like best friends, and
mm,
I could make her laugh just by looking at her. Do you know?
mhm.
I really miss that.
Yeah,
You know, like I just I
yeah,
like, and it was just because it was just being silly.
yeah,
You know, whether it's like
yeah.
walking around the house with my boxers pulled up so that I've got like this camel toe. Just do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I'm like, and interesting enough, like I couldn't do that in the last relationship that I talked about before.
Mm,
It's just
mm.
funny how you have like these different kind of
It's
versions of you
different.
that's allowed to come out,
Yeah,
and comes back
yeah,
to
yeah.
this sort.
Different
So I
dynamics.
remember, I remember literally like like doing the thing that I just mentioned, like pulling my boxers and shorts up, so I'm like my bollocks are like this.
Yeah.
Did that in like the last relationship. Like, what the fuck are you doing? And I'm like,
Actually hilarious.
hands on my hips. I was like, just like, do you not think it's funny? No.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're staying like this until I walk upstairs.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This has been lovely to catch up again and get real deep, and I really appreciate your time, and I'm just so grateful for this connection that we've got over the internet. And yeah, I hope we can do an in-person one at some point.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me again, and thank you for the very invasive questions. It really got things rolling.
um, where should people go? Give us all your links, promote your stuff.
You find everything under my actual legal name, Nadja Lasbeck. It's nadjalasbeck.com for my website. You will find me on social media under that name. And I guess that's it. If you want to directly email me, you can email to hello@nadjalasbeck.com.
Hello. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of morning.
Thank you.
Speak to you
You
soon.
too.
Hey guys, it's me. Thank you so much for watching that episode, and congratulations for making it all the way to the end. I really appreciate it. A few things before you get going. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. And if you enjoyed this episode, the kindest thing you can do for me is to share it with a friend or family member. Don't forget to check out the show notes for links to both my guests and myself. And if you made it this far, why don't you drop me a DM?